Good morning and welcome all to this webinar. We'll be starting shortly. We'll just wait for 1 or 2 more minutes for the other registered participants to join. But we will be starting very, very shortly. So welcome, feel relaxed. Our guest speaker is already in the room. Welcome, Stephen. Nice to see you there, looking bright as usual with your bookshelf full of knowledge and insights.
Thank you. And good morning to you, Martin, and good morning to the room.
Right. Morning, Kefa.
Morning, Martin. Morning, Stephen. How are you? Morning, our guests. Welcome all to our webinar, which I'm also looking really forward to, because this is a great topic that is right at the bottom of our hearts.
Right.
Thanks, Kefa.
I actually think we should get going. Actually, I see there are 25 people in the room already, and so that we respect people's time, we don't want to take too long. So Kelly, over to you. The thinking behind the setting up of the leadership group was really to enable me to share my experience and knowledge gathered over many years of work in the public and private sector, and to enable future leaders to benefit from this knowledge, but also to continue to learn new things which were coming up in this space of leadership and unleash their potential in this space of leadership to become better. We have grown and expanded as an organization, starting off with myself as the only person within the leadership group. Today, 5 years down the line, we work with many people as associates of the leadership group. We've got a core competent of 4, and then we've got more than 10 experts that we work with to deliver our various programs. We have also developed partnerships with the academia. We do run, at the moment, a program on ethical leadership with Stellenbosch University in South Africa. We have partnerships with the Thunderbird School in Arizona, where we also partner on some of our programs. We have delivered programs through the county government system. So we've worked with a number of counties to deliver programs in the area of communication, in the area of service delivery and leadership generally. If I look back at some of the clients that we've worked with, there's literally no sector that the leadership group has not touched over its last 5 years that we're celebrating now.
Our engagement with the leadership group was very fruitful in that the team that delivered consultancy and facilitation of the program are people with experience.
The thing I liked about that is that it wasn't just a presentation that you make to everybody and say, this is what we need to do. It was tailor-made.
For me, the most exciting was the coaching that I got from Martin, who is still currently my coach. Coaching, what does it do? It builds your confidence, it improves your communication skills, and it improves your work performance. So those 3 things for me, the coaching has delivered over and over again.
One of the key things that I can say has been very impactful or very insightful is around external stakeholder engagement and management. When you're growing a young company like we are, you tend to focus a lot more internally in the business, getting things off the ground, getting things running. And what you then miss out is what is happening in your external environment, the relationships that are critical to take you to the next phase.
Seeing the client's vision come to life is an exciting moment because it's transformative. It's, you know, you've made an impact in the society directly or indirectly.
We come into organizations, either commercial or not, at moments where real change is needed, that can be driven by external disruptions, that can be driven by bad performance or other factors. And our contribution is to find ways out, and that combination is quite exciting.
Being the one that is at the front line trying to help them solve those problems, being the one that has to interpret their needs and build solutions that respond to that, being able to support the process of delivery so that we can actually see and feel the impact that we're giving those organizations, it really makes me feel very, very good about the work we do.
The team has very experienced people in the field, and it's just good to sit with them and listen to their ideas and how they strategize and how they work, and having to learn from them and being given an opportunity to contribute. That's really fun.
What I find most exciting is the fact that we're able to combine and bring academic experience and practitioner experience into one model and use that to transform organizations.
And the leadership group has played that key role on our side, and we strongly recommend them in that area because of the experience that we've got with them.
So good morning once more, and welcome to the Leadership Group's Leadership Conversations webinar. Today, the 8th of April. Very delighted to have you all here. I hope you can hear me. Kefa, can you hear me? Right.
Yes, Martin. Yes, Martin, you're audible.
Right, so welcome, and thank you all for joining us today for what promises to be a really insightful, exciting discussion. I will be introducing Stephen Buckley, who is our facilitator, our guest speaker today, and who is going to be running this session with us, but it's going to be an interactive session, as he will tell you. We have scheduled this session to run for 1 hour, so we hope that we'll get you out of here at 11 o'clock so that you are able to go back and continue building the nation wherever you are and in what capacity you do that. My name is Martin Oduor-Otieno. I'm the founder and Chief Executive Officer of the Leadership Group. You've seen a short video clip talking about who we are. We are celebrating our 5 years anniversary this year. You can see the banner. My virtual background says that. We actually did this in December last year, but since there's very little to celebrate these days, we've decided that the whole of this year, 2021, we are going to be celebrating our 5th anniversary. So would like to bring some positivity in the air during these difficult times. So once more, welcome. Today, our topic is going to be a topic on ethics and integrity in the workplace. I will not venture to define what ethics and integrity are. I don't want to steal the thunder from our guest speaker, Stephen, but suffice to say that at the Leadership Group, this is one of our key values. Everything that we do apply ethics and integrity to it as the cornerstones of our existence, and indeed the cornerstones of leadership, as we shall hear. I do have in the room with me also some of our associates at the leadership group. Kefa Bosire, if you can just wave at our guest today. So Kefa is a senior associate at the leadership group. I have Kelly, who is going to be our chief administrator today, and is also an associate at the leadership group. I also have Christabel here with us as well. Everybody here is quite lucky because I've never seen Christabel's face on Zoom, but she's just put her face there for a very short time. So we are all lucky to see that today, Christabel. I also have here in the audience Rosemary Okelo Olale. Rosemary, I saw you registering. Can you show your face briefly if you are in the room and just wave at, yes, there she is, Rosemary. Thank you very much. Rosemary has been walking this journey in the leadership group with us right since the very, very beginning. So I'm delighted to see you in the room here, Rosemary, and of course, Stephen. At the leadership group, we do partner with our clients to deliver programs in the area of leadership, in the area of governance, strategy, development and execution, as well as executive coaching. We also work in the area of culture and change management with our various experts. And over the last 5 years, we have worked with clients across multiple sectors, in the public sector, in the private sector, in the not-for-profit sector, at universities. Our coaching program have covered more than 200 to 300 clients over the last 5 years. And we're very delighted by the results that we've seen, the outcomes that we've seen from our clients getting better and better at what they do through the programs that we've been able to deliver as the leadership group. I'd like to invite you to follow us on our social media channels, on our LinkedIn. Visit our website, www.leadershipgroup.co.ke. Kelly will post our calendar in the chat box during the course of this meeting because we do have a calendar of programs that we run throughout the year. You'll be able to see programs that you can join. We have monthly webinar sessions such as this one. We do also have training programs in each of these areas that we operate in. So feel free to visit our website and look at those and register as appropriate for those which would be of interest to yourself, growing your leadership. So let me introduce Stephen before he comes on board. So Stephen Buckley is a long-term friend of mine and an associate with us at the leadership group. He's very passionate about developing people by focusing on their strengths, their experience, and expertise. Over the last decade, he has slowly transitioned from journalism, and he'll probably tell us a little bit about that, to leadership training and coaching, and has worked with C-suite executives, middle-level managers, new leaders, aspiring leaders, and entrepreneurs across a range of industries. He has also taught leadership communication, leadership styles, emotional intelligence, and change management, among other subjects. In fact, I first met Stephen when we were teaching on a program at the Aga Khan Graduate School of Media and Communications many years back. Stephen has facilitated leadership workshops across Africa, Europe, and the United States, Asia, and the Caribbean. He currently lives in Nairobi, Kenya. He's been here for a number of years. But Stephen, let me at this point break the news and congratulate you, because Stephen has just landed a position as a professor at Duke University in Northern Carolina in the US. So he will be moving back to the States in the coming months, but we were discussing earlier that we will continue to benefit from him thanks to Zoom and technology generally. He is a former reporter and editor. Stephen worked in and around journalism for over 25 years, including more than a decade with the Washington Post, where he was based in Nairobi and Rio de Janeiro. Most recently, he oversaw professional development programs and as an associate dean at the Aga Khan University Graduate School of Media and Communications, which is where I met him. where his team developed a suite of offerings for executives, including a program held in partnership with Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. He's got a very long CV, obviously, and it would consume all our time for this session, Stephen. So allow me to stop the introduction there and welcome you to take over from now. The floor is yours, and I look very much forward to listening and participating in this conversation. Over to you, Stephen.
Martin, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all for being here this morning. It's wonderful to see some friends in the room. I would be remiss, actually, before I go on, I would be remiss if I not only thanked Martin, but Kelly, who's worked so hard in putting this together. So as Martin said, we're going to be talking about ethics and integrity this morning. And before I go on, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see the presentation. So all right. Okay, so everybody should be able to see in big bold letters the power of trust. Because even though the official title of this webinar today is Ethics and Integrity in the Workplace, really what we're talking about today is trust. As Martin said, we want to be respectful of your time, and so I'm just going to leap right in. So just to outline what we're going to talk about today, we're first of all going to define what we mean by integrity. Then we're going to talk about what that actually looks like day in and day out. Excuse me. Then we're going to talk about, well, what difference does integrity and ethics make? And then we're going to end on one of my favorite topics, which is emotional deposits. So that's the outline, and we will just, and then obviously we'll take your questions. So let's dive in. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about what integrity is not. You know, when Martin invited me to participate, Martin and the team invited me to participate to lead this session, I said, well, just Martin, I can only do this as a fellow pilgrim. I am not perfect. I make mistakes all the time. I'm a person who is still learning to be a leader of integrity. So integrity is not about being perfect. On the flip side, it's also not about being a walking doormat. It's not about simply letting people step all over you. Yes, people of integrity are kind and generous, but that's not all they are. So just wanted to tell you what integrity and ethics are not. So here you see obviously this cluster of roots. The root word for integrity actually means whole or unified. So, you know, a tree is a very good metaphor because obviously what we see are the trunk and the branches, and the leaves. We don't see the roots, but all of us know that if a tree does not have strong, healthy roots, it rots, it falls down. And so integrity means doing what we say we're going to do. It means that how we behave or what we believe on the inside is how we actually act on the outside. I sometimes think that our approach to integrity is a little bit like our approach to Zoom calls. So You all are probably not like this, but some of us, you know, we dress very nicely up top for the Zoom call, but on the bottom we've got shabby jeans, or you know, we're not nearly as well put together. Integrity says we are put together both on the inside and the outside. We are whole. For some reason, I'm having trouble advancing my screen. Not sure why. My screen has frozen. I am not sure what has just happened. I apologize.
Kelly, can you put it up and maybe help him advance from your end?
Yes, sure.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Not sure what just happened.
That's the power of technology, Stephen.
Yeah.
I see the guys on TV say we shall be back on air shortly.
Yeah, exactly. Forgive our technical difficulties. We're having some technical difficulties, they say. I do apologize. While we fix this, I should say, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say that Kelly can put up the presentation from her side and flip the slides for you, if that will work.
Let's see. Okay, great. So so let me mention two things. Thank you very much, Kelly. So let me mention two things before we dive into the nitty-gritty. One is that, as a good friend of mine likes to say, every action either builds or diminishes trust. Trust is not magical. It's a process. It happens over time, and it happens moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that whether we like it or not, we are passing on our values to the people around us. So whether we are a CEO or a mid-manager or perhaps a brand new manager, just understand that all of us are influencing those around us with our values, for better or for worse. So that's a little bit of context. And now let's talk about what integrity and ethics look like on a day-to-day basis. Let me just preface this by saying that these are all some principles that I've learned over the years. Again, I am not perfect. I am still learning these things, but these principles have served me well, and I hope they're helpful to you too. Before we go on, though, let me just say let me just ask a poll question. So if you asked your colleagues to describe your values, so don't describe what you say are your values, but if you asked your colleagues what your values are, what would they say? Let's use the chat box to fill in the answers to that. We'll just take a minute for that. Just type in one or two things. I am not, oh, thank you. Honest, trustworthy, good, dependable. That's a good one. Anybody else? Reliable, decisive, excellent. Open, candid, and engaging, consistent. Disciplined. I like the range here. Supportive. Excellent. Another reliable. Caring. These are great. We'll take a couple more. Critical. Firm. Thank you. Thank you both. Fearless. Donna is fearless. All right. Anything else? Anybody else? Empathetic. Thank you. I love the range of these. This is marvelous. This is great. Creative. Yet another one. That's wonderful. That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So we will go back to our presentation. So all right. Can we move to the next slide? All right, thank you. So I just want to point out that as we talk about ethics and integrity day to day, it's really important for us to recognize that ethics and integrity are not topics to be separated from the actual work that we do. Our job as leaders, our goal as leaders, no matter what we do, should be to build a place that does great work and a place that's also a great workplace. That's the ultimate goal. I've worked in places that have done excellent work, and sadly, they weren't particularly ethical in how they did that work. And I've worked in places that were very ethical, but the work was mediocre. As leaders, our goal should be to bring ethics and excellence together on a day-to-day basis. Can we go to the next slide? What does that look like? So Ursula Burns was the first Black woman to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And she said, this is how she defines putting integrity and excellence together. She says, in our company, the end doesn't justify the means. You can get results in a good way or a bad way. You can get results and serve the community. You can get results and be sustainable. You can get results and be enabling to people in their lives by being nice. Now, as I said earlier, it's not just about being nice, but notice that she points out, she says, look, you know what? You can get results and still serve the community. You can get results and be sustainable. You can get results and enable people in their lives. So that's what we mean when we talk about putting ethics and excellence together. May I have the next screen, the next slide. So when I first became a leader, and Martin mentioned my 25 years as a journalist, so most of the examples I'm going to give today will be from my experience as a news executive. So when I came into leadership, I remember being in a meeting once, and I happened to look down at the shoes of the other people in the meeting, and I noticed that they were all wearing loafers. In fact, they were wearing the exact same type of loafer, and I was the only one in the room wearing shoes with laces. And I remember being a little bit taken aback by that and a little bit shocked by that, honestly, because I realized, oh, I'm an outlier here. Likewise, you know, as a leader, I remember as a new leader feeling very self-conscious about the fact that I'm a pretty soft-spoken guy. I'm relatively calm. I'm not necessarily a rah-rah, in-your-face leader. And that was a little bit uncomfortable for a while. And then I realized, you know what? That is just who I am. That's not going to change. It is very difficult to be a leader of integrity if we're not being authentic to ourselves, if we're not being real with ourselves. So that's the first thing. That's that's the foundation. These next two things are related. They're different, but they're related. So Again, whether you're at the very top of the organization or you're a brand new leader, it's important to get into the habit of giving others more credit than they deserve. I'm sorry, it says we deserve, but what they deserve. So what happens is that many times, and we've all worked for people like this or worked with people like this, where the leader, a project gets done or work gets done, and the leader is the one at the front saying, look what I did. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it's subtle, and sometimes it's actually quite blatant. But in the role of leadership, one of the ways to build trust is to make sure, not that we get no credit, but that others get more credit. And sometimes, yes, that means getting more credit than they deserve. Maybe we haven't. And then the flip side of that is sometimes as leaders, we have to take more blame than we deserve. So, you know, sometimes you see this with sports sometimes. A football team will play a terrible match and, you know, they'll lose 3-0 or 4-0. And the manager of the team at the press conference after the game will say, you know, look, yeah, we played a terrible game, but we weren't very well prepared, and that's my fault. That's on me. Now, was the coach / manager out there running around trying to score goals or playing goalie? No, of course not. But good leaders know when to say, you know what, this one is on me. This is the buck stops with me. And so, so we have to be strategic about this, but leaders of integrity take more blame than we sometimes deserve. Sometimes take more blame than we deserve. Many times when we talk about ethics, we think about answers. We think about solutions. You know, it's hard because when we're facing a difficult ethical question or issue, many times people come knocking on our door for the answers, right? They want us to make the decision. Well, one of the things I have learned over the years is that when we're facing difficult ethical questions, it's more important for us as leaders to be asking the right questions, because that will lead us to the right answers. I can count on my both hands how many times over the years I have actually come up with the answer to a difficult ethical question. Most of the time, it's been the entire team or somebody else on the team. And so, and I remember in particular when we used to face, when I was a news executive, when we used to face a difficult question, I would say, look, let's lay out all these issues, let's lay out all these questions on the table now, because once we publish, we can't come back. We can't unpublish. And so whatever industry you're in, it's always worth the time to ask all the right questions, even in this massively fast digital age. It's even more important actually to slow down and ask the right questions. Next slide, please. So this one is a bit counterintuitive. You know, most of us have grown up believing that we should treat people equally. The challenge is that that is very difficult to execute in the workplace. And I'll give you a quick example. Let's say you work for an organization where deadlines are really important. You have to meet your deadlines. If you've got a report or you've got whatever it is that you're doing, and if your boss says you got to meet a deadline, that's one of the values of the organization, is being timely. But let's say there's somebody who meets deadlines all the time, but their work is average. It's not particularly creative or thoughtful or expansive. It's just okay, but they meet their deadlines. But meanwhile, on the other hand, you have somebody who, you know, sometimes they miss the deadline by a day, but man, when their work comes in, it's spectacular. It's thoughtful, it's creative, it goes beyond what you expected. In a situation like that, I think the question is, let's say these are folks who are both up for pay increases. So the question is, how do you treat those folks fairly? As opposed to, well, gosh, how do you treat them equally given the fact that as an organization, we value deadlines? So that's a hypothetical, but that's why it's important to think about treating people fairly as opposed to treating them equally, because treating folks equally can lead to some very challenging and frankly demoralizing dynamics in your organization, in our organizations. This is the late great management guru Peter Drucker, who said effective leadership is not based on being clever, it's based primarily on being consistent. And I take that as consistent in two ways. Consistent in treating people fairly. If people know that you treat everyone fairly, that's a very important form of consistency. But also, it's primarily based on being consistent, to go back to what we were saying earlier, consistent in terms of our actions matching what we actually believe. Again, integrity means wholeness. It means unity, or to use Drucker's word, consistency. Next slide, please. All right, this one is a tricky one, particularly during times of crisis, times of great stress. And if I looked for a show of hands and asked if we're going through a time of crisis and great stress, I believe all of us would raise our hands. When in doubt, tell the truth. So years ago, I was new to an organization. There was the president, and then I was the president's essentially deputy. And I was tasked with leading a retreat, a staff retreat. And staff retreats are fun, but at one point we said, okay, enough fun. We're going to open up we're going to open the floor to you to ask questions. Well, I confess that we were going through some tough financial times, and I should have expected the types of questions we got, but I didn't. And so, unfortunately, for me, the very first question was, are people going to lose their jobs? And so on the spot, I had to decide, okay, how am I going to answer that? And I decided, you know what? I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to say yes. And so I said, yes, this organization is going to be smaller a year from now than it is today. Which of course launched a whole series of other questions, like a whole storm of other questions. Well, how many people, and when is this going to start, and so on, and what will be the criteria? And some of those questions I could answer, but some of them I couldn't. And so the point here is, when in doubt, tell as much of the truth as you can. There are going to be times when you say, you know what, I just can't answer that question right now, which was in a few cases that particular day of the retreat, that's what I had to say. You know what, I can't answer that question right now. As soon as I can, I will. But whenever I could be transparent, I was. And I want to just say that this value of transparency, of truthfulness, is really important for today's younger generation. They want to know what's happening, and they want to know as much as we can tell them. And so for those of us who have younger folks, and I really mean anybody 40 or younger, 35 or younger, just know that this value is particularly important for those folks. Let's move ahead. So over the years, one of the mistakes I have made is that, I've met talented people. I mean, folks of extraordinary gifting who, in the back of my mind, I thought, man, I'm not sure if I really trust this person. And instead of perhaps going to the hiring person, or at least voicing my concerns, on too many occasions, I was swayed by the power of their talent. And can I just say that every single time I regretted not speaking up and saying, I don't know, this person seems very talented, but I'm not sure about their integrity. And so one question might be, well, how do you do that? How can you, before you hire somebody, how can you figure out whether they're a person of integrity or not? Well, I'll give you two ways, because somebody, I think it was Joaquin, asked this very good question even before we started. How can you know whether someone is a person of integrity? Well, I'll give you two very quick pieces of advice. One is just know that you can put together scenarios during an interview that test whether a person is a person of character and integrity. And you can also check their references. And as you check references, you can very subtly ask questions that get to this issue of trustworthiness. So hire for integrity. Don't just hire for competence, hire for character as well. All right. All the leaders I know and respect are folks who practice what I like to call mutual accountability. So they not only hold others accountable, because that's part of the job of leadership, but they also have a group of people who hold them accountable. And so they are able to, when they're about to make a tough decision, they have a group of folks they can go to and say, you know what, man, this is tricky. Here are the things I'm trying to sort through. Or perhaps after they've made a difficult decision, they can go to this cluster of folks, and maybe it's 2 or 3 or 4 or half dozen people you can go to and say, you know what, I'm not sure if I did the right thing here. And they can give you gentle, but hopefully some candid feedback. And so that's what we mean when we say we can't lead if we can't follow. Every follower, I know followers who are not necessarily good leaders, but I don't know a single leader who's not also able to follow as well. All right. So leaders of integrity prioritize not just profits, but also people. And in building those relationships, they recognize that that's how they're able to get excellent results. I'll tell you a quick story about Warren Buffett, the great investor. Can we go to the next slide, please? In 2004, Warren Buffett was about to buy a company. He wanted to buy a $23 billion company. That's, I think, 2.3 trillion shillings, more or less. And, when you're acquiring a company, that can take, especially of that size, that can take months and millions of dollars to get done. But Buffett said that he really trusted the people who were selling him this company. And he said, you know what? Let's just get this done. So they struck a deal in 2 hours. So a process that could have taken 3, 6, 9 months, maybe a year, took 2 hours because of the mutual trust between Buffett and his fellow CEO at the company he wanted to buy. So that's what Buffett means when he says, look, when trust is high, speed goes up and cost goes down. That means when there is trust, we can get things done faster, and frankly, we can get them done more cheaply. All right, so let's spend just a few minutes talking about one of my favorite topics. At the beginning of this session, we talked about the fact that we build trust day by day, that every interaction either builds trust or diminishes trust. Stephen Covey, a wonderful management author, leadership author, and thinker who has passed away, used to refer to something called the emotional bank account. And Covey said that our actions are either creating emotional deposits, and emotional deposits are actions that build trust, or our actions are creating emotional withdrawals, which are actions, behaviors that reduce trust. So the things that I've just talked about over the last 20 minutes or so, those behaviors are designed to build trust. That is not by any stretch an exhaustive list. There are many, many things that we can do to build trust. But Covey says that if we have made enough emotional deposits, not only do we get things done, and not only is the work of a higher quality, he says that if we have a high degree of a high number of emotional deposits with our colleagues, then if we make a mistake, if we make an emotional withdrawal, as it were, we still have a reservoir of trust with those folks. Okay, so let's turn to you all now. What are some of the behaviors that, aside from the things that I've mentioned, what are some of the behaviors that you've seen that can build trust with others? And they can be seemingly insignificant, or they can be seemingly grand. But again, please use the chat box and tell us some of the behaviors that you've seen that build trust in an organization. And these can be behaviors that you've adopted yourself, actions that you take, or they can be behaviors that you've seen actions that you've seen others take. Share personal stories. Yes, consistency and walking your talk, those are very closely related. Yes, open communication, empathy, collaboration. Gratitude is huge. I personally think there is no more powerful thing than being able to simply say thank you or job well done. Keep your word, courageous authenticity. Yes, role model, be a role model. These are great. Recognition for good work, transparency, be open, honest feedback. I noticed that vulnerability. So several of you have used different words to say essentially, be open, be real with people. Teamwork, that's a good one. Yes, making sure everybody feels engaged. I see someone says acknowledging mistakes. Can I just say, both in work and in marriage, the three of the most important words that I've learned are, I am wrong, or I was wrong. So that's a great one. Yes, say sorry. All right, owning up. Yes. So thank you. Those are terrific. Those are terrific. So interestingly, I want to stay with Rosemary for a second, because we see here, and I've listed a bunch of other things, but interestingly, Rosemary said, listen. I think it was listen to the opinions of others, and you'll see one of the actions listed here is listen. One of the things that's really hard for leaders to do is to listen, and to listen to understand, to genuinely appreciate where the other person is coming from. Even if we disagree with what they're saying, the ability to listen, and I'm going to brag for a second on Martin. because Martin is one of the best listeners I have been around, leadership listeners, and it makes, I think he's naturally an effective leader, but I think this takes his leadership to a different level. And I would say, I say that when Martin is not in the room too. So learn to listen. That's a very powerful way to build trust. And so we won't go through all of these, but here are some other things, many of which you actually mentioned as well. So over to you now. We've given you lots of food for thought. And so we will now take your questions.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Let me just appreciate that sharing of those insights with us today. Really powerful. They are simple statements, but really loaded as I looked through some of those slides. We do have just a few minutes more for this session. We have got about 10 minutes. So I haven't seen any questions posted in the chat box, but if you can just raise your hand and you can then make a comment or ask a question. I see one actually, Stephen, in the chat box from Ruben Kisigwa. Why is it that local Africa boards that have well-exposed chairs continue to have membership that is skewed against women, yet women have generally displayed a higher appreciation for ethics and integrity than men, virtues that boards desperately need in their mentoring role?
That's a fantastic question, Ruben. And I'm actually going to turn to you, Martin, because you have extensive experience with board governance, and your insights here, I think, would be very useful.
I should have switched off my camera, Stephen, so that you don't see me. I mean, I would just say that this is a historical development, actually, because if you look around, women generally have been underrepresented in very, very many places. But the tide is changing now. If you look at boards today and their recruitment processes, you will see that one of the big criteria that is being used is this diversity and inclusivity criterion, which hopefully with time is going to heal this historical happening here. That's all I can say, actually. I mean, I certainly, in my own experience in the boards that I sit, there's a big focus on gender, on inclusivity, on women, on youth, and other forms of diversity. Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. And I apologize for putting you on the spot, but thank you.
I see another question from Adolf, which says, integrity and ethics are basically human. How can we address these important issues where data is getting more important than people? Data is getting more important than people, and yet integrity and ethics are human. Stephen?
So that's a terrific question as well. It's very easy to just follow the data. And this, you hear people talk about this all the time. But the problem is there is no following the data without people. There is no execution. You can have all the information in the world, but ultimately we need actual people to follow, to execute. And so I was talking to somebody earlier this week, and she was talking about how she's managed to turn some companies around. And she said, you know, Stephen, all I've done is I've put the people first. I've figured out played to people's strengths, and she's been enthusiastic. And so it's up to us as leaders to keep trying to steer our organization toward people and reminding our organization that it's not just about the data.
Stephen, I want to invite Rosemary here because she's an expert on data and she might just wish to challenge you on that point. So Rosemary, sorry for putting you on the spot, but do you want to make a comment on this issue of data versus human?
Actually, we just ran a course with Columbia University on ethical ways of doing data, and data cannot take place without ethics and integrity, because data also reflects the true society. So if there is an ethical society, data will always reflect it. And data always also reflect personal ideas. So when you say you want data of how many people are in the slums, you can easily actually misuse that information. So ethical ways are also needed in data, as we actually reflect and analyze data the way the society wants to be looked at, or rather. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rosemary, and apologies for putting you on the spot there. There's a question about how can you tell at an interview whether somebody has integrity or not. And I think, Stephen, you spoke about that when you were making your presentation. But there's another one which says, what are some safe spaces for ethical / integral leaders? Seems like the pool has multiple sharks.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but I'll take a stab at it. Actually, before I answer the question, Rosemary, I want to thank you as well. I thought that was a terrifically insightful answer to Martin's, to the other question about data. I'm not sure if there are safe spaces if you're a leader of integrity or an ethical leader. The truth of the matter is that being someone of integrity is risky. That the best safe space is to keep an eye out for other leaders of integrity and cultivate them. The leaders I respect most, again, have a little group of 3, 4, 5 people who are leaders of integrity they can go to, and they can say, man, I'm struggling with this, or wow, I'm not sure what to do about that. So that's how I would respond to that.
So it requires courage here, Stephen. That's what I hear you saying. Right.
Yes, absolutely. Not sure if there's a safe space.
Right. There's another question here. How do we ensure people practice emotional intelligence more in work situations?
Yeah, that's an important question. And it's tied, in some ways, it's tied up with the data question, because as we become more data driven, it's very tempting to neglect emotional intelligence, which simply means emotional intelligence simply means that we are aware of our emotions, as well as we are aware and we manage our emotions, and we are aware of and we manage the emotions of others, and we do that effectively. So how do we encourage that? I think one way to do that is to praise that. People do what they're praised to do. And so if you're in a meeting as a leader and there's somebody else running it, and you notice that the other person is both managing her emotions and the emotions of the people in the room effectively, one way to encourage that is to make sure that that leader knows, you know what, you did well. And then to find ways to spread the word that that's an important value. So there are lots of ways to do it, but that's one way to do it. Because again, people do what they're praised to do, what they're praised for.
Thank you, Stephen, for that. Let's take a final question here from, there's a few more coming in, but there's one here from George, which essentially is asking, how do you get the balance when you have a desire to always do the right things, but people seem to frown upon you here? I guess, Stephen, it relates to that courage thing that we talked about before, but do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so first of all, if that's something that you've dealt with personally, I'm sorry. That is a very difficult, very challenging position to be in. And the second thing I would say is, just at the risk of repeating myself, I think that's why it's important to not take this leadership journey alone. Leadership is a team sport. it's very tempting, and I'm going to say particularly for men, to try to do this alone. It's important to have folks around us to support us, challenge us, encourage us, build us up, because being a person of integrity can be a lonely place.
Thanks, Stephen. We've come to the end of our time, but let me just post this last question to you from Francis. Can integrity and ethics lead to business growth? How do you sell improving on this for business growth? So essentially, what's the link between integrity and business growth?
So that's a great question too. And just to go back to the beginning, we started by saying that the goal should be of every organization should be to do great work, to be a place that does great work, and to be a great workplace. And what you find when you look at businesses, organizations that have lasted over the course, in some cases, of not just decades, but perhaps a century or more, is that they figured that out. That when people trust us, they want to do business with us. When people trust us, even if we make a mistake, the relationship is not ruined. And so there's a great book that I would recommend called The Speed of Trust. That does a marvelous job of making the case for why, for how businesses can do great work and be places of integrity and thus grow. So, so that's what I would say. Just very quickly, I've posted my email address for those of you whose questions I didn't answer. If you would like me, if you really feel like you want me to answer your question, send me an email. I'd be happy to get in touch and we can arrange a call and I can address your questions. Martin, I know you've got things.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen, I just wanted to say thank you very much, and maybe to invite you to make your final statement, a call to action or whatever tickles your fancy at this point, for us all. And then I'll make a few closing remarks and we can then leave in the next 2 minutes.
Yes. So we lead out of who we are. This integrity is about working and leading from the inside out. And so it's possible today that, in fact, I hope that today some of the things we talked about have challenged us. I know that I've been personally challenged as I've listened, as I've talked about these things. So, so that's what I would encourage us to go away with is to just make sure that our talk and our walk match each other, and to recognize that that can't happen unless we start by working from the inside, and then what we are in the inside will hopefully manifest itself on the outside. You've been a great audience. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And certainly I couldn't agree more with the points that you've made there. There's real need in our country today for leaders with the ethical processes and integrity. Our country yearns for this kind of leaders. Our continent yearns for them, and therefore I would just like to encourage you to explore more in this area. And some of those behaviors which Stephen has spoken about, we will be sharing the presentation with yourselves, as well as the recording of this session, and you can go back to them as you build your capacity in this space. I'd like to thank Stephen very much on your behalf for an excellent morning. I'd like to, it was too short. I mean, 45 minutes runs pretty quickly, actually, Stephen. I'm sure there would have been more for us to explore. I just want to say that the leadership group does run a program with Stellenbosch University on ethical leadership. It's actually a masterclass. And our next masterclass on ethical leadership is going to take place between the 14th and 18th of June. We will share the flyer with all of you in the coming week or so. You can also get more information from our website, www.leadershipgroup.co.ke, and Kelly has posted our contacts on the chat box. You can take those down as well. Get in touch with us for anything that you may need. As I said, our programs continue. Kelly has also posted our calendar of events. We have also this week launched an online leadership program under the Martin Oduor-Otieno Academy. And again, you can get to that website, which is posted there, www.martinoduor-otienoacademy.com. And again, you can join our next class and explore further areas of leadership that are of interest to you. I also want to announce that, as I mentioned earlier, we do run monthly free webinars as part of the leadership group's commitment to sharing and developing leadership. And we invite you to enroll for this throughout the year. Our next webinar is going to be on the 14th of May at the same time. It's 1 hour, 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And we will be exploring issues around culture, which will build on today's conversation. We've got some interesting insights on the subject of culture in the workplace. So please do join us. We shall, of course, do the countdowns and provide registration details for that. I don't know, Kelly, if I've forgotten to say anything that you wanted me to say, other than to thank everybody for being with us here today for this 1 hour. We wish you well. Please stay safe, keep safe. We'd like to see you at our next events. So obey all the Ministry of Health protocols, and I wish you and your families and your colleagues safe and a good time. Till we see you again, bye-bye, and thank you very much. And thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. God bless.